Let's create a script for our understanding of the divided history today. We are stepping back into the studio for another deep dive on Fess and Filtros, and
Uh-huh.
today is significant.
It really is.
We're looking at a figure who stands right at a fork in the road of, really, human history. He effectively splits the monotheistic tradition into two huge, distinct branches. We are talking about Ishmael.
Or Ismail, yes. It's the ultimate fork in the road.
Yeah.
Because when you actually look at the text, he's this pivotal character in both Jewish and Islamic traditions.
But the stories couldn't be more different.
Not at all. I mean, in one, he's the exile. He's the son who sort of fades into the desert to make room for the real covenant. And in the other, he's the carrier of a divine light, the forefather of a final prophet.
It's a subject that really demands a lot of care. So before we even open the sources, I think we should set the tone. Given the sheer weight of these texts and the reverence billions of people hold for them, we're going to approach this with a very solemn and respectful lens today.
I agree completely. We have to. We need to act as historians, as careful analysts of the text itself. No hot takes, just a close reading of where and how these traditions diverge.
Okay, so let's look at what we have on the table. We've got etymological studies on Hebrew names. We have some extracts from the Targums, which, if you aren't familiar, are these ancient Aramaic translations and, well, expansions of the Bible.
Right, and on the other side, extensive Islamic historical texts, specifically the Qisas al-Anbiya, or Stories of the Prophets, and other key documents.
It's a lot to unpack. Where do we even start?
Honestly, the best place is the name itself. It's maybe the one point where everyone seems to agree at the beginning.
The name Ishmael.
Ishmael. It's Hebrew, and it's basically a full sentence packed into a name. It translates to God hears or God will hear.
And that isn't just a poetic name, is it? It comes out of a very specific, very painful story involving his mother, Hagar.
It's tied directly to her trauma. In the Genesis narrative, Hagar is an Egyptian servant. Sarah, Abraham's wife, can't conceive, so she gives Hagar to Abraham to produce an heir.
A common practice at the time.
Yes, but the moment Hagar conceives, the whole dynamic shatters.
Yeah.
Tension just erupts, and Hagar flees from Sarah's harsh treatment. She runs out into the wilderness, and it's there, in that isolation, that an angel finds her.
And tells her to name the child Ishmael.
Because, and this is the direct quote, the Lord has heard your affliction. So from his very first breath, this child's identity is defined by God listening to the suffering of an outcast.
That's the foundation. But here's where the split begins.
This is it. God hears him, but the humans involved, they really struggle with him. The sources recount that the conflict between Sarah and Hagar just reaches this boiling point. Sarah demands they be cast out. And this entire geopolitical shift hinges on one single debated Hebrew word.
This is the part that really fascinates me. The word is metzahek, right?
Metzahek, yes.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most argued over words in biblical scholarship.
Okay, so help us understand. In a simple translation, it just means playing, doesn't it? Sarah sees Ishmael playing.
On the surface, yes. But Sarah's reaction is, it's nuclear. She goes to Abraham and says, "Cast out this slave woman and her son, for her son shall not inherit with my son Isaac." Now, if the kid was just, playing tag, that reaction seems incredibly disproportionate.
It sounds like a massive overreaction, and I guess that's what scholars later tried to wrestle with.
That discrepancy is exactly what the rabbinic scholars took on. If you look at the Midrash and the Tosefta, these are Jewish commentaries that kind of fill in the narrative gaps, they just couldn't accept, it was just playing. They argued Metzahek had to mean something sinister.
To justify Sarah's anger.
To justify the exile, exactly.
So what did they come up with? What was he supposedly doing?
It varies, and it gets pretty dark. Some rabbis argued it meant idolatry. Another, Rabbi Eliezer, suggested it implied sexual immorality. But the interpretation that probably did the most damage to his reputation was the idea of warfare.
Warfare. He was a child.
They interpreted playing as Ishmael shooting arrows at Isaac. So pretending to play, but actually threatening the life of the true heir.
Wow, okay, that is a huge leap. We go from a kid in the yard to a potential murderer.
It completely changes his character profile. And we have to look at when these interpretations really started to gain traction. The source material shows a fascinating shift in a text called the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan. This was compiled much later, specifically after the rise of Islam.
Ah, okay, so now there's a political context. A rival faith is rising, and they claim descent directly from Ishmael.
Precisely. And you can almost see the text morphing to reflect that new tension. The Bible originally calls Ishmael a wild donkey of a man. Now, To our modern ears, that sounds like an insult.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very complimentary.
But back then, a wild donkey was a noble animal. It meant someone free, untamable, powerful, a free spirit of the desert.
So it wasn't necessarily negative at first.
No. But later, as the political rivalry with Islam heated up, the commentary stopped seeing him as a free spirit. The Targums start calling him a bandit, a thief. They essentially retroactively criminalize him to fit a new narrative.
It justifies the exile. If he's dangerous, he has to go. It makes perfect narrative sense for the political reality of that time.
It does. But now, I want us to cross that threshold. Let's step into the other tradition, because the Islamic sources paint a radically different picture.
It's like a photographic negative of everything we just discussed.
A complete inversion. And it starts with how they view Abraham. In the Quran, Abraham isn't a Jew or a Christian. He's a Hanif.
That's a key term from the readings, Hanif.
It means a pure monotheist, someone who submits to the one God who existed before these later religious divisions. He was a submitter, which, is the literal meaning of the word Muslim.
And in this tradition, Ishmael is not the mistake. He's not the backup plan.
Not at all. He's essential. The sources bring up something called the light of Muhammad, or Nur. And this is a bit more mystical than just genealogy.
Can you explain that? What is the Nur?
It's a profound concept, especially in Shia thought. The idea is that when God created the universe, he first created a divine light, the Nur. This light was placed in Adam and then passed down generation to generation through the line of prophets. It's a spiritual marker of divine selection.
And the crucial point here is where that light goes after Abraham.
Exactly. The tradition is very specific. The light passes from Abraham to the forehead of Ishmael.
So instead of being cast aside for Isaac, he becomes the chosen vessel for this divine legacy.
The chosen one. The genealogy is traced with incredible precision in the sources. God chose Ishmael from Abraham, then the tribe of Banu Kina from Ishmael, then Quraysh, then Banu Hashim, and all the way down to Muhammad. He's not a rejected wild donkey. He's the carrier.
It reframes the exile completely. It wasn't a punishment. It was a deployment.
That is a perfect way to put it. And that brings us to the geography. The Bible says Hagar wandered in Beersheba, which is a bit vague. The Islamic tradition is extremely specific about where Abraham took them.
This is where geography becomes theology, isn't it?
It absolutely does. The tradition says Abraham took them to a specific barren valley. The text calls it Baca, which is identified as Mecca, the future site of the Kaaba.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was just empty desert, no water, no people.
And this is what leads to the story of the well, which is so significant in Islam.
The well of Zamzam. The story describes Hagar, or Hayar in Arabic, running desperately between two small hills, Safa and Marwa. She's looking for water, for any sign of life for the dying sun. She runs back and forth 7 times.
An act that is reenacted today by millions during the Hajj pilgrimage.
It is. The ritual of Sayin is a direct commemoration of a mother's struggle. It honors her agency. And then the miracle happens. Either the angel Gabriel strikes the earth, or in another version, it's Ismail's own heel that kicks the ground, and water just gushes forth.
And the name Zamzam, I remember reading it, comes from Hagar trying to contain the water.
That's right. It was flowing so powerfully that she was shouting, Zam! Zam! Which means stop, stop, or contain yourself. She was trying to build a basin around it.
And that water, that one, well, changed everything.
A passing tribe, the Jurhum, saw birds circling in the sky, a sure sign of water. They came and asked Hagar for permission to settle there. She agreed, but she kept the rights to the well. And this is a crucial point. Ishmael grew up among them, he learned Arabic from them, he married into their tribe, he became Arabized.
So he becomes the bridge, the Abrahamic lineage connecting with the Arab peoples. Now, the stories that I found most telling were about Abraham's visits later in life. The Bible sort of leaves them separated.
But these traditions don't. These are what we can call the parables of the threshold. Abraham comes to visit Mecca while Ishmael is out hunting. He meets Ishmael's first wife. She doesn't know who this old man is, and when he asks about their life, she just complains. Says they're miserable, poor, and hardship. She's completely inhospitable.
And in the desert, hospitality is everything.
It is the cardinal virtue. So Abraham leaves a coded message. He tells her, when your husband returns, give him my regards and tell him to change the threshold of his door.
Which Ishmael understands immediately.
Instantly. He knows the threshold is his wife, the keeper of his home. And because she lacked gratitude, he divorces her.
Then Abraham comes back a second time.
He does, sometime later. Ishmael has a new wife. Again, Abraham arrives while Ishmael is away, but this wife is completely different. She welcomes the stranger, offers him what little food and water they have, and she praises God for their blessings.
And the message changes.
Abraham says, tell him to keep the threshold of his door. It shows that Ishmael was being morally formed and tested by his father, even from a distance.
And eventually they are properly reunited for a huge task.
The construction of the Kaaba. The tradition holds that Abraham and Ishmael built the sacred house together. They're presented as co-founders of the pilgrimage. This cements Ishmael's role, not just as a descendant, but as a spiritual partner.
I want to fast forward a bit. We've got the foundation, the Kaaba. But the source material jumps forward centuries to the time right before the Prophet Muhammad. And the well of Zamzam, it actually gets lost, doesn't it?
It does. It vanishes. The texts explain that over the centuries, tribal warfare drove the Jurhum tribe out of Mecca. And before they left, they buried the well to hide it, along with some treasures.
So the location was totally lost to history.
For centuries, it just became a legend, and this lasts until the time of Abdul Muttalib, who was the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad.
And this story reads like an archaeological thriller. He starts having these recurring dreams.
A vision, telling him to dig, but it gives him these really cryptic clues, like dig where the ravens peck, near the ant's nest, at the place of blood and dung.
That is incredibly specific and a little ominous.
So he goes to the Kaaba enclosure, he finds a spot that matches the description, and he starts digging. And he doesn't just find water, he finds a buried treasure.
The golden deer, right?
2 solid gold deer statues, yes, along with swords and armor that the Jurhum had buried there.
What a discovery. Hitting gold statues in the sand.
But, you know, finding a treasure and the only source of fresh water in a desert city, it immediately sparks a huge conflict. The other clans of the Quraysh tribe demand a share. They say, this is the well of our father Ishmael, we all have a right to it.
But Abdul Muttalib refused.
He stood his ground. He claimed it was divinely granted to him. The dispute was eventually settled by signs from God, which established his family's custodianship over the well.
It seems like there's a recurring theme of water as a divine seal of approval. It legitimizes that specific lineage.
Exactly. It reinforces the legitimacy. It shows that the Nur, that light we spoke of, was accompanied by tangible blessings and stewardship of the sacred space.
And we also have to talk about Hashim, Abdul Muttalib's father. The sources spend time on him, and he seems to represent a completely different ideal than that wild donkey archer we started with.
Hashim is pivotal for understanding the ethos of this line. His real name was Amr, but he was called Hashim, which means the one who breaks.
But not breaking bones, I take it.
No, he was the breaker of bread. The story is that a terrible famine hit Mecca. Hashim used his own wealth, traveled to Syria, bought flour, and brought it back. He slaughtered his own camels to make a broth, and he broke the bread into it to feed everyone, pilgrims and locals alike.
He established the tradition of rifada.
Yes, the honorary duty of feeding the pilgrims. He was also a brilliant diplomat. He secured pacts of security with the Byzantine and Ethiopian empires, which established the trade routes that made Mecca prosperous.
So if you look at this lineage, Ishmael the builder, Hashim the diplomat and feeder of the poor, Abdul Muttalib the restorer of the well, it just completely counters that polemical narrative of the bandit or the wild man.
That is the crucial takeaway. One tradition looks at this line and sees dangerous outsiders living by the sword. The other tradition looks at the exact same line and sees architects of a sanctuary, providers of water and food, guardians of a sacred trust. Hashim's pacts brought stability, not chaos.
It's just so striking how the same person, the same historical figure, can cast 2 such radically different shadows depending on where the light is coming from.
And yet, both traditions agree on his survival. They both agreed that against all odds exiled, dying of thirst, God heard him. Ishmael. Whether that divine hearing resulted in a great nation of wild freedom or a great nation of light and submission, that's where the paths diverge.
It really makes you think about how we construct our histories and our identities. These ancient texts are still shaping the world today.
It raises a vital question for all of us,
Okay.
When we read these stories, are we reading them just to validate our own boundaries, or are we trying to understand the incredible complexity of the human family? Because at the end of the day, Isaac and Ishmael stood together at Abraham's grave. That's a fact in both traditions.
A profound place to pause. We've traced the script from a child in a tent to golden deer in the sand to the soup kitchens of Mecca. It's a reminder that history is rarely a single straight line.
It's a tapestry, and understanding all the threads is the first step toward understanding the present.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the figure of Ishmael. We hope this gives you a new lens through which to view these ancient living traditions.
It has been a pleasure to explore this with you.
Until next time, hasta la próxima y que tengan paz.